Hey guys, welcome back. I've got a few more stories for y'all today, and one of them is very personal. I'll put that one at the end, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, a lot of stuff happening. I hope to talk about it all very soon. I am working very hard on all of this for you all, so I hope you enjoy these stories. Okay, so this morning I ran across this incredible video of a cardiac arrest. As a former paramedic, there's some things I'd like to point out for you.
Draw forward. There you go. Get back on chest. Get back on chest. AD. Wow. Let me in here at the head. Let me in here at the head. Yep. Okay, we'll burn you on the side of his chest. Yep.
So what I want you to pay attention to right here is his color and his breathing. If you'll notice, from about nipple line up, he's got a bluish purple color. That is called cyanosis. That is from a lack of oxygen. Most people know that. But most people, or a lot of lay people, have never seen agonal respirations. When he looks like he's breathing right here, you can tell they're not normal, but you may not know exactly what it is. Those are agonal. You can think of it like a fish out of water. They kind of look like they're gasping, and it's not an actual respiration where you have like a tidal volume, and basically it's a reflex. So the mouth will open, but they're not really breathing. It's a dying reflex. It's what you see right before somebody dies. So pay attention to that, and then I will pop back in.
Dry. All right, we got the tongue. Yeah. I need a dry towel with someone. On anything dry. Here. I'll look. Here. Here. All right. I got this. Put that on the. We'll center it. We'll clean. Center it. Center this. Right there. There you go. There you go. Go. Big drum. All right, let it analyze. Stop. Everybody clear. Everyone clear him. No one touch him. Clear up. Watch your legs. Watch hand.
That's agonal.
Good, thank you.
That's agonal respirations right there. Notice his color. So as they continue to work this, what I want you to notice is that chest compressions are never interrupted. He's going a little bit fast, but adrenaline is involved. It's morbid, but if you sing Another One Bites the Dust and keep to the beat of that, your timing is perfect. Notice he's going deep because it's violent. CPR is brutal, but you are trying to pump someone's heart from the outside of their chest. So coming up here in a minute, what I want you to pay attention to is the change in his breathing. That happens when his pulse returns. He's no longer agonal. He's now actually trying to breathe. And shortly after his breathing changes, you'll notice his hand move, and then they check a pulse, and they have a pulse.
He's sweaty. See where that pad's coming off? Wipe underneath. Take that chin and get a little bit of resistance. Yep. Keep working. From heel. Get up. Come back on top. Get resistance from him again. This time. Check your seal. Check your seal. Check your seal. Can I get ready? Switch. You got it? Okay. Yep. Gauze right here. Gauze. My finger's cramping real bad. I got a good seal. Get a good seal. Get a good seal. Good, I got it. One. Shin seal. There you go. Hey, get up. Get back in position. You're going to go after him. There he is. Come on, buddy. Come on. Wake up, buddy. Wake up. No, put your hand on his wrist. Feel his blood. Am I pumping it? Anybody here? Anything like that? We got an oral pharyngeal in there. Yeah, King will set. Don't go nuts with the bag. He's got the area in place. Okay. All right. We'll slow the bag. You guys need anything. Push harder. Okay. Make sure path is clear.
So watch here in just a minute. They're going to take the bag off. Now look, see how the chest rise and fall? His mouth isn't opening like that. That's because his pulse is back. They just haven't noticed that yet. But see his hand moving?
Stop. I got radial pulse. Yep, let him breathe. I've got a radial pulse. Can someone check carotid just to make sure? Yep, someone check carotid. Continue CPR. That's fine, we've got a pulse.
I don't know what the background is of these guys, but they did a phenomenal job and absolutely saved this man's life. If they had not been there, he would not be here. Bystander CPR is so important, not only for survival, but your survival and, a functioning brain, because there are worse things than death. But this guy is already at home. He's doing well and recovering, and hopefully will live a long time yet. But this was a phenomenal video for explaining some of the things that we see in cardiac arrest. But we can't show them because we don't record our patients. But this guy posted this himself on the internet, so I thought I would take the opportunity and explain some things to you. Bye. I think any paramedic that has been in the job long enough, I'll have a story of that call. The one that made you question things or made you look at life in a different way. I've never talked about that call for me publicly, but I was scrolling TikTok this morning and I ran across a video of a mom, and she was talking about how she curled her daughter's hair and watched them put her makeup on her to get ready for her funeral. I believe her daughter was 13 or something like that, but it was really emotional and it hit me right in the gut and brought up that call for me. So I'm going to tell you about it. In order to tell you about that call, I first have to give you a little bit of a backstory for context. I got dispatched one night to a cardiac arrest of a male teenager, and it was at the very edge of our coverage area, so it took us a long time to get there. And by the time we got there, he had been down long enough. He was in a systole, and the closest hospital was like 45 minutes away. So I called the doctor and we called the death on scene and went back in service. And yeah, it's sad. It's sad anytime someone, so young passes away. But so that's the backstory. So fast forward a year or two, I don't quite remember how long, a year or two after that call, I get dispatched on another cardiac arrest, teenage girl this time. We arrived on scene and the whole family is there and are hysterical, understandably. And I got to the patient and she was in full cardiac arrest at this point, and it was obvious that she had vomited and aspirated, and there was copious amounts of vomit. But this was a witnessed arrest, and to be quite honest, I don't remember what the initial rhythm was when we put her on the monitor, if it was a systole or PEA, I don't quite remember, but it was witnessed and CPR was given, so we're working it. And so we start working it there in the floor and get her on the monitor. I get her intubated, we get IVs, we start pushing drugs, we're, asking questions, getting a history, and sometime during all that, we got ROSC, which means return of spontaneous circulation, so we got a pulse. The general public may, be like, oh gosh, you saved her, but anybody in the medical field, ER, ICU, EMS, know that to get ROSC, especially in pre-hospital setting, of course it's a good thing, but it just usually means that their passing is delayed by, I don't know, a few hours to a day or two usually. So when we get ROSC, we load her up and get ready to transport her. And while my partner and the other crew were taking the stretcher with her to the ambulance, her mom ran up beside me while I was grabbing equipment, and she grabbed onto my arm and was screaming, begging me to please save her daughter. And although, I've been around family members when they lose a loved one, there was something different about it this time. There was this rawness and like just this feral scream and begging me to save her daughter. And it really, really shook me up in the moment. I remember once we were in the ambulance, I remember having issues with the capnography because of the amount of vomit. And capnography is great. I'm a big fan of capnography, and I remember being super frustrated because the amount of vomit was messing with the capnography, and I guess that was something for me to kind of hyper focus on to, take my mind off of how I was just shook up by the mom. But anyways, we transport her on to the ER, and where she passes away. And I get my drugs refilled, do my paperwork, kind of collect myself, and on the way back from the ER, I get a phone call from another first responder, and he asked me if I knew who that was, and I said no. He told me who it was and told me that her brother died a couple of years or a year or two prior, and told me about it, which he didn't have to because that was the call that I ran that I told you about in the first part of the story. So I had run the call of him, and then a year or two later I ran his sister, both sudden cardiac arrest, teenagers, and that's when the dots connected on why that mother was so feral and why it shook me so much. I didn't know that, of course, when I was on scene, but when I connected those dots and realized that this woman had lost both kids, and I ran both calls, that was one of only maybe 2 or 3 times that I ever cried in my career. But I started crying, and I cried for probably a week because I also lived in the community in which all of this happened. So if I opened up social media, it was a big deal in the community just because of who the family was. But I just kept getting blasted with pictures, and you can't say anything. I mean, it's the family's loss. It's not, to even try to compare what I'm feeling to what the family's feeling is just not even a comparison. But that one really, really shook me up, and it's something I've thought about a lot over the years. And I even had bruises on my arm from the fingerprints where the mom was grabbing my arm. She just grabbed it and was digging her fingers in, begging me. And I had 4 or 5, I don't remember now, but bruises from her fingers in my arm. I think that's a big reason I get so defensive sometimes when the Christians in my comment section try to come after me and stuff. And you can't romanticize that. And when when you don't see it for yourself, it's easy to think, oh, well, they had a peaceful death and they're in heaven. Like, but it's, for me, not being religious and being present and witnessing these sometimes just gut-wrenching, brutal things is, I can't romanticize that, and so you just have to deal with it the best you can. I guess I've been feeling nostalgic lately since talking about these stories on here, because the story I'm going to talk about in this video was also from very early on in my career. One of the responsibilities of a paramedic is, when responding to a medical emergency or some kind of trauma, when you get on scene, you have to assess your patient and determine what is the best facility to take them to based on your assessment. For example, if you have a patient with a head injury, like obvious, you know, they're showing signs of a bleed or they're unstable, whatever, and there's neurotrauma, you're not going to want to take that patient to your local, you know, level 3 trauma center. You're going to want to either transport that patient to a more appropriate facility by ground, or you're going to want to call air medical to get that patient where they need to be faster. This was always something that I personally struggled with as far as air medical, just because, for 2 reasons. One, I never wanted to miss something serious or critical that could be detrimental, and not fly that patient to a level 1 trauma center or stroke center or whatever it is. And the other reason I struggled with it is because if you go ahead and do that and it ended up being something very minor and they got discharged that day or the next day, like that happens a lot, then you have potentially financially ruined that person and their family. And that's a hell of a responsibility to put onto someone that is just trying to provide good medical care. So there's this constant, you know, do they really need air medical? Like, really need it because they need it to save their life? Because if I make the wrong call and use it, wasn't really needed, now they've got tens of thousands of dollars in medical debt just from that alone. So early on in my career, I ran a motorcycle wreck, and when I got on scene, I noticed that I knew this person, knew him personally, and I walked up, and I'm laughing because it is kind of funny now, but he was laying on the ground. He still had his helmet on, and I walked up, and he said, "Hey, Christy, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Hey, you've had a little accident. I'm going to take care of you." So I started doing my assessment. I don't remember any like distracting injuries or any unstable vital signs or anything like that. However, about 15 seconds later, he goes, "Hey, Christy, what are you doing here?" I was like, "Oh, hey, you had a little accident. I'm going to take care of you." 10 seconds after that, "Hey, Christy, what are you doing here?" So, needless to say, I knew that he obviously had something going on neurologically. It could have just been a concussion. It could have been a bleed. So, I called air medical, flew him out to the trauma center. And I won't say it was the wrong decision. I won't even say it was the right decision, but it was a decision. It is what I did. But he was found to have a very small bleed, but I don't think there was any intervention required. Like, it kind of just reabsorbed, and I think he was discharged like a couple of days later. And so there was, you know, that side of me that was like, ugh, did I really make the right decision flying him out and putting this financial burden on him? Or should I have taken him locally and then let them go from there? But I don't think it was the wrong decision by any means. It's just something that I've always taken very seriously, that financial burden of that. And a lot of other providers do not feel the same way. They will fly someone out in a heartbeat, and that's their prerogative. There's a phrase that you will hear if you're an EMS called, when in doubt, fly them out. I am not a big fan of that phrase. I think that you do a really good assessment and you think critically, and it should, you know, if you're on the fence about it, maybe get another opinion. But, you know, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do or quarterback anybody else's call. That was just one call from my own experience. And I have more stories about that regarding patients that I didn't fly out that I should have, and I will talk about that and walk you through my thought process on some of those here soon. Okay, bye. We've had our 4 pet goats for about 11 years now, and last night one of my absolute biggest fears happened. Last night I had just got done finishing my nails and I heard this awful sound, and I knew immediately that something was attacking the goats. So I jumped up and called for my husband, and we got outside and got down in their pen, and somebody's 2 stray dogs had trapped them underneath their goat barn. We have like a basement under the barn where they sleep, but they were trapped under there, and the dogs were attacking them. And our big goat Mo, it looks like they tried to rip his tail off. He's also gashed up on his side. And our fainting goat Buddy, we couldn't find him last night. We looked for a couple hours, but found him this morning dead. I'm an animal lover, especially a dog lover, so I am just absolutely infuriated right now because my husband had to dispose of the dogs, which one is gone, the other one may be injured but got away. So now I don't know if that dog's gonna come back. It was a male intact blue pit. I think it had a green collar, but none of the goats will go near their pen right now. So I don't really know what we're gonna do, but I think they're walking around looking for Buddy, and it's really sad. Anyways, not the story I wanted to tell today, but that's what we're dealing with right now. Buddy was a good goat. He was a sweet boy. He's healing up.
Oh yeah, he'll wag it every day now. That's 20-year-old gravel they're digging in. So I'm filing my nails, Mama. Oh, big sexy.
Don't you think about it.
Mo. Better leave Mama alone. You see what I tell you about goose turning brown? Mo.
Why are you like this?
Hey, don't make me get over out here. Just leave Mama alone. See, down his back legs and on top of his head turning brown.
Mama's little Taylor.